So our next talk is Conquering the Unfriendly Skies, and we have two excellent presenters here, Kenny and Jeremy, and they will be talking to you about their experiences flying. I believe we'll have some time for questions as well.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here and for giving us the opportunity to talk a little bit. I think we got a little ambitious in naming our slideshow Conquering the Unfriendly Skies because...
Battling is a pretty good word.
Battling, overcoming. All right, we can go on to the next slide and we can introduce ourselves real quick. My name's Kenny Salvini. I am the president and co-founder of the Here Now Project. I also write for New Mobility Magazine, and I'm on the advisory boards for SeaTac Airport and Alaska Airlines. And I'm a C34 complete quad for almost 20 years. So, yeah.
My name is Jeremy Hannaford. I am a C6 quadriplegic. I am the coach of the Seattle Slam wheelchair rugby team, along with the president of the Seattle Wheelchair Rugby Association. Been injured for 20 years.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, we can go on to the next slide and just kind of the overview of everything. We're gonna talk briefly about the problem. I know there's lots of people out there that may have some anxiety or their own horror stories as well. But then we're gonna try to talk about the solution, and it really has to do with becoming an expert at our own situations and how we can navigate the entire flying experience. We're gonna look at pre-flight, at the airport, at the gate, kind of break things down as much as we can with all of our collective experience. I know Jeremy probably flies a lot more than I do. I haven't flown a ton lately just because I've got a little 3.5-year-old human hurricane at home, and we try not to travel with her too much. But yeah, so we can go on to the next slide, and this is the elephant in the room that we now know that wheelchairs get damaged about 32 a day. I think 2023 it was just over 11,000 chairs got broken. And I think they started tracking in 2019, started mandating that all US carriers track how many devices get destroyed, mishandled, or lost. And I think, yeah, the graphic below says it's about 45,000 chairs that have been damaged. And yeah, and so we can kind of go into the next slide and just talk about why that is. I had no idea that airplanes were not attached to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I didn't figure that out until I had a couple chairs destroyed myself, and didn't know that the Air Carrier Access Act came out in 1986, and that is what governed accessible planes. And I think the most that it said in that bill originally was that people with mobility disabilities prefer the aisle seat, and that was about as much as they mandated accessibility on planes. But when the ADA came around 4 years later, they had basically no kind of reason to put planes in. And so that's why buses, trains, sidewalks, buildings, all of those are governed by the Department of Justice, whereas the Department of Transportation oversees the Air Carrier Access Act. And so that's why we can go 30 plus years from the ADA and not have an accessible plane. And yeah, and so we can go on to the next slide that's basically touches on the horror stories. You know, how many people have flown in the last 5-10 years with a wheelchair? How many people have had something damaged? Yeah, Ian's nodding his head. How many of you had damage in your time, Jeremy? I know you sent me a handful of slides.
I've had numerous chairs, not only bent, broken, but I've had chairs destroyed. Playing wheelchair rugby, we're not only traveling with the manual chair that we're using, we're also traveling with a sport chair. And with my team, we're traveling with numerous chairs at one time. So when you're having all those chairs at one time, they're just trying to get everybody loaded and in and out, right? So a lot of times our chairs are just another piece of luggage to them. And chairs will be grabbed, thrown, treated like a piece of luggage, how they toss those. And they're specialized chairs that are worth thousands of dollars. I know my rugby chair cost $10,000. I know the power chairs are a whole lot more. So I've had manual chairs where I've gotten off the plane into my chair and backrest broken, spokes broken on wheels, and many other things.
Yeah, is there anybody here that hasn't flown because they're scared of flying? I see Evan in the back, Tanisha's in the back as well. That was my story as well. When I was hurt in 2004, I heard all the horror stories like, don't take your power chair on a plane because they're going to destroy it. So I avoided air travel completely for 12 years, and then my chair broke anyways on a couple of disastrous road trips. So I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? And then United Airlines destroyed my chair in 2016 so bad I didn't have it for about 11 of the 14 days I was on the East Coast. And I got a manual chair for 5 days and a hand-controlled chair for another 6 days, and it showed me just how far we had to go when it comes to accessibility. And I've got the graphic up there of Ingracia Figueroa that everybody may have heard of in 2021. She passed away from downstream effects of her chair being broken. She wound up in a loaner chair that didn't fit her well, and so she had an old pressure sore open up, and that's actually what ended up costing her life. But we say these horror stories just to kind of give you guys the idea of what's at stake when we're putting ourselves on these planes. But for the majority of the time, these catastrophic damages aren't going to happen, but it's the little damages that can be just as devastating for somebody. If you're only got one armrest that moves back for you to transfer in and out of bed independently, if you have one of those levers broken, you're kind of SOL. And so the more that you can do to protect yourself and your equipment, the better. And so that's kind of what we're going to touch on for the most part going forward. And so we can go on to the next slide. And so for the majority of power chairs especially, the majority of the damages happen when they're trying to get the chair underneath the plane. They've got to load the thing up onto the conveyor belt, and then it's got to go into the cargo door hold, which the majority of kind of even, I'd say, domestic flights are 737s these days. They're not the wide body planes nearly as much. And so the cargo door height on the 737s are really low. I think it's only about 32 inches. And so these manual chairs can fit under there for the most part, but the power chairs with our large backrests are what are going to be the big problem. And if they can't fit your chair in upright, what they're going to do is they're going to dump it on its side. And that's usually when the majority of the damages happen. I think when my chair was destroyed on the second time around back in 2017, I think they just tried to force it through the door, and it basically sheared the backrest off, and it caused about $20,000 in damage to the whole seating system. And and so the most important thing that you can do in these situations is figure out how to break your chair down ahead of time. We can get into talking about what Jeremy does and what I do to break our stuff down in a little bit, but first we got to go through a little bit more of the process with you. But there is a great resource on wheelchairtravel.org. I think that is that's going to be on the next slide, but so I think we're on to this is where you get to kind of do your homework when it comes to planning for your flights. There's a lot of information out there now because there's a lot more awareness when it comes to air travel with mobility devices, because the airlines are slowly waking up to the damages that they're causing. A whole bunch of the different carriers have different intake forms, and so I've got Alaska Airlines and United Airlines different forms up just as examples. And so you can kind of go through the process, and what they're called is special service requests, and this is what notifies the gate agents and the ramp crews of what devices are coming. And the more you can kind of specify your equipment, like I think on the left side, it's probably too fine of print for most people to read, but you can select what kind of wheelchair you have. If you have a manual chair or a power wheelchair, you can also specify if you need help from the gate, whether with a transfer team or any of that stuff. And so that's where you can prep that ahead of time. And now most of these carriers are going to notify you on the website that some of these airplanes may not actually fit your wheelchair as it comes, and so that's where you want to go. I've got a link in this slideshow, which I'm assuming will be shared with everybody in an email. So it's wheelchairtravel.org. There's a guy named John Morris that flies kind of all over the country. I think he's flown over 2 million miles now, but he has broken down every major airliner and their cargo door heights, so that you can do some research and really start to make your plan for what it's going to look like when you show up on the day of. And yeah, so we can go on to kind of at the airport. And yeah, this is where knowing your rights and communicating really clearly is pretty important. And yeah, so I show up, you know, a couple hours before. I imagine what's it take for you and the whole team to show up when you're planning to bring the whole rugby team onto the flight?
I always tell the team to show up at least 2 hours early, just like everybody else. But make sure all of your chair, your equipment, whatever that you're bringing, is, if you're bringing like a sports chair or your day chair or whatever, knowing what things can come on and off of it, what special pieces that maybe can be hurt with when they load the chair or whatever. Just make sure that you're real specific, letting them know. If you already have scratches on your chair, or if there's dents on your chair or whatever, make sure that that's specified. So when you get your chair later, you know that either they damaged it or you're fine.
And then when you guys show up here, you're checking a lot of your equipment and stuff at the gate, or not at the gate, at check-in with baggage, right? Because I think just about every piece of medical equipment is going to be free of charge. It's not going to be baggage fees. So are you guys checking your shower chairs, all that stuff at the beginning?
Yeah, so we check everything. Our chairs, our equipment bags, our shower chairs, anything that has medical equipment, catheters, anything medical, it's free of charge. And you need to make sure that they'll fight you for it. A lot of times they'll say it's, they need to charge you for it. But if they give you any grief, just let them know that you have medical equipment, and it's very, very important that it makes it to the destination. Flying Spirit or Frontier, those are the low budget airlines. They really don't want to. They want to charge you for everything. So if they argue with you, ask for a manager or whatever, and make sure that that's covered, and make sure it's documented, because they should put tags on everything that you have. That's you're not carrying on with you, to make sure that if it does get lost, you have that tag, and then it's going to be reimbursed later.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that really Jeremy touches on is the fact that you have to be the expert when you're showing up, and you got to be prepared to really communicate that way, even if it's your first flight. Like I showed up at the airport and I pretended that I was an expert, and I'm going to tell you this is exactly how things are going to work. So building on what Jeremy was talking about, like I bring a whole extra bag that's oversized for carry-ons that they always fight me on, and so I show up with all the extra parts, and I'm like, no, that's coming with me because this is all mission critical stuff. And so the more we can kind of self-advocate and tell them this is how things are going to work, they usually get out of the way, and they're, for the most part, will be accommodating.
Because a lot of times, we're the minority, so they don't deal with wheelchair users that often. So a lot of times, if you know something that they don't, you're educating them. And if they want to fight you about it, then they get their manager, then they're double educated on it. So just be the best advocate for yourself as you can be.
Yeah, and one other resource that we found that is kind of one of the best kept secrets in air travel lately is TSA Cares. It is a phone number that you can call, and if you call 48 hours ahead of time, a lot of times they'll bring you an expert right to check in that will let you bypass all the lines for security. They'll take you through, kind of the side alleys, just so that you don't have to skip or wait in all the lines and stuff. And so they usually like about 48 hours notice, so that you can have somebody meet you. I don't know if they come to the curb always, and it's kind of hit and miss depending on the airport that you're coming and going from. But similar to all the other kind of travel advice that's been going on today, the more preparation you can do in the beginning, the better. And so you can go on to the next one. Yeah, and at the gate is really where the rubber meets the road, because this is where things start to move really quickly. You want to show up really early and establish contact both with the people at the gate, and just remind them if you've got a transfer team that's going to be meeting you up there, if you've got multiple chairs that you're bringing with you. I mean, I've only traveled with one other wheelchair user at a time, so I can't imagine what it's like when they're lining up folks for a rugby team.
It's a lot.
Do they bring multiple aisle chairs for you guys, or how does that work in that process?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do when we get there to the airport, we go through TSA. TSA itself is an adventure. As a wheelchair user, you go up to the line, they put you off to the side, and they have to bring in somebody special to do a pat down on you. So you have to be patient with that, because they're going to take you in the back. You can get the option of doing it out in front of everybody, or they can take you back into a private room. They do the whole pat down on you. And a big thing for me is, like, I wear shorts that have a belt on them, and one thing they want you to do is take your belt off when you're going through TSA, right? That doesn't happen. If I take my belt off, I'm not getting my belt back on in my chair. And then if I transfer, my shorts are going to be around my ankles, and then, then I'm going to be on the no-fly list. So I make sure that I let them know the things that I can and I can't do. So when they're patting me down, they ask to take your shoes off. For me, it's a pain in the butt to take my shoes on and off. So as long as I talk to them about it, they can let them stay on. Same with my belt. And they do the whole pat down, and then you go through. But when we get to the gate is when I go make sure that they're going to have a lift team there. I let them know how many people we're going to have. Some of my players can transfer themselves onto the aisle chair. Some of us can't, so we need a 2-person lift to do it. And if we don't vocalize that, they're just going to have one person there or nobody at all, and you show up down at the bottom at the jetway about to get onto an aisle chair, and they don't know what to do. So letting them know prior, they can call somebody in, and it all depends on which airline you're with also. Some are better than others. I know Alaska is great. They have a great lift team. They come through and they're very efficient with how they do things. They'll bring in multiple aisle chairs, bring in multiple people, because we don't want to hold anybody up, right? We're first on, last off. So if we've got 6 players all having to be loaded on at one time, one chair at a time, it's going to take forever. So they try to bring multiple aisle chairs, get everybody loaded, and then hopefully we're good to go.
Yeah, yeah, and when it really you check in at the gate and you try to kind of prep the transfer team ahead of time and be like, hey, I need early boarding, I need to be out in front of these things. And they might give you 5 minutes before they're ready to board everybody else. And so it's really important for us that we start breaking my chair down. I'll talk about transfer slings in a second, but I bring my own transfer sling. I get that underneath me beforehand. My poor wife, I made her do it. Claire had to break the chair down up on in front of the gate, in front of everybody this last time we flew last year, just because I didn't want to make the ramp crew push my wheelchair all the way back up the ramp. And but that made for quite the scene in front of everybody else, and Claire was kind of under pressure trying to break the chair down. But also it was a good teaching opportunity for me, for everybody that was being delayed, that they got a taste of why it was going to be delayed. I didn't mind getting a little bit more down and dirty with everybody moving me around, because I'd rather people see that this is why your flight is delayed, and so maybe they'll be a little bit more aware the next time. And this is where you want to have all the kind of moving parts that you're going to leave on the chair labeled. If you've got releases on your brakes or your motors, you want to have tape around those. I know my buddy Ian comes with a really good printout. I think even with his picture on it, it's like, hey, this is my wheelchair, this is how it works. And I think he sometimes even will attach a walkie-talkie. Are you still doing that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so attaching the walkie-talkie for easy communication is another piece that's pretty helpful. And you can see right there that the chair's broken down on my end. So what I do, I figured out is I could take 2 bolts out of my backrest to fold my backrest down, and that was what really got me underneath the threshold, because I don't have recline like a lot of power wheelchair users do. And so we figured out just a quick way to modify. I think there's a tip on the wheelchair travel blog as well that you can replace a couple of those bolts with quick release pins, so then they're not messing with tools. You can just take a couple of pins out of the backrest, fold it down, and make sure it's ready to go. And yeah, I think you can see the picture of Claire in the top right. She's got the oversized carry-on bag that I actually bring foam and cellophane, and that's what I wrap around the chair, because the more I can protect it, the better. And but I will say, having had 2 chairs damaged in the span of a calendar year when I first started flying, but once I figured out to break this backrest down, I haven't had a single problem since. And so that's it's been a really good way of breaking things down. And we can go on to the next slide. We've touched on transfers a little bit, but it's really important to know your body, because like Jeremy was saying, everybody transfers differently. You know, we've got this one shot of this gentleman being lifted by the shoulders from the New York Times a few years ago, and that would probably break my collarbones if I lifted that way. And that's where the importance of travel slings come in. There's one called the Comfort Carrier, which is pretty expensive, but they do sell it online. But it wraps underneath you just like a Hoyer sling, but then it's got a bunch of vinyl straps and handles that make really easy pick points, so that people can pick you up and transfer you a lot easier. I think there's another one offered by All Wheels Up. We have them listed as one of the resources at the end, that I'm pretty sure if you sign on to a certain mailing list of theirs, they will send you one that works pretty well as well. And yeah, and then when you're prepared to transfer, I know I bring a Roho cushion that I'm going to be bringing on the plane, because the aisle chair itself, I mean, I call it a clipboard on wheels for a reason, because it is really a really hard, narrow seat that you're going to be sitting on, and the less time you can be on that, the better. And one little note that's probably blocked by most of the people that you can't see at the bottom, but one of the new developments that we helped kind of spearhead with Alaska Airlines is that now you have the option, if you're traveling with an entourage, you can send one person from your team down underneath the plane with the chair, so that they can be your eyes, ears, and kind of voice when they're starting to load a chair incorrectly or something. And yeah, and you can arrange sometimes with the flight attendants on the trip out to do the same thing. If you can get off early, half the time they will let you go under the plane onto the tarmac. I think the only time we have had an issue is in Washington, D.C., because that's they do a little bit tighter security down there. And then that goes to on board. And this is, you know, for me, is that the next one? Yep. Yeah, for me, being on board, this is probably my most fragile state, because I've been on this chair for 20 years now, and it's what's protecting my skin integrity. And so it's really important that you pay attention to all aspects when you're on the plane. You know, I bring that Roho, and it works really well, but you need to remember that you've got to adjust it at altitude. Do you guys bring extra cushions yourself too, or?
Yeah, some of us just sit on the regular seat, and then some do bring the travel seat cushions, kind of like that thin one that dude uses when he's driving. It's great to have that little bit of cushion, because not very often on planes are the seats cushiony enough for you to be able to sit for hours on end, unless, you know, even if you can do pressure releases and move around, it's still going to be really hard on your skin. I know I can move around a little bit, but you know, anything over 3 hours, my butt's killing me and I'm starting to get AD, sweating, all those things. So definitely having something to sit on or being able to do those pressure releases is a big deal.
Yep. Well, and then bladder management. I've always got a Foley. I've got a suprapubic catheter, and so I just bring a liter bottle that nobody knows when they're draining my bag right in the aisle. But I've heard some creative solutions that rugby teams have done before, so I'm going to let Jeremy handle that one.
Well, yeah, they always tell you when you get on board that, not always, but there's sometimes when you're on these flights and they'll say, oh, we have an aisle share so you can go use the bathroom if you need to, which is great. But I was a quadriplegic. I can get me onto the aisle chair. How am I going to transfer from that into those tiny bathrooms? It doesn't happen. We've had some horror stories where guys have had to use the bathroom and they didn't have the aisle chair and they ended up scooting themselves all the way down on the floor into the stall and then help into the toilet to use the bathroom. But those are rare occasions. But if you really have to, a blanket, throw it over your head, over your lap. A thing for me is I always love on longer flights is to not sit in the aisle. I like to slide all the way over the window if it's at all possible. For one, I don't have to have people when they have to use the restroom climbing over me to go do their thing, how many times. But it also gives me that privacy if I do have to use the restroom or have to go to the bathroom. I can throw that blanket over me. I'm not in the middle of everybody. But yeah, we've had guys do all sorts of things. Unconventional for sure, but when you gotta pee, you gotta pee. And you're not gonna risk AD or anything worse than that on a flight. So most of the times, flight attendants, if they see you doing that, they kind of know what's going on. Or you can let them know that, I need a little more privacy, especially, or if you've met somebody that's sitting next to you, kind of let them know they can go to the bathroom or go for a walk or whatever, just so you have that little bit of privacy. But don't be shy on a flight. If you have to use the restroom, just do it.
Yep. And then the last line that I put on there, I think it was my first flight with Alaska Airlines. It didn't dawn on me to think about landing and deceleration. As a high quad, just sitting there, we had no plan for what landing would look like, but thankfully I thought of it about 2 minutes before we touched down, and both my caregivers kind of held me back. And so I think what we've resorted to recently is just bringing a gate belt. And so once we load onto the plane early before everybody else, we just flap down the tray table behind the seat and then thread the gate belt. I know there is a harness that is available. I think you need a DOT exemption because it's only made for children that fly, but there is a similar harness that will kind of hook around your seat. And I think in one of the articles I've got linked, there's a link to kind of follow that protocol to get that. And do you have a question real quick? Right?
Well, I was going to say, you could try dreadlocks.
You could try. Yes, you could tie your dreadlocks around a seat if you happen to have those. So that's a good tip there, Greg. And then upon arrival, this is, we had a really interesting case happen not too long ago with one of the big travel bloggers, Corey Lee. They bring your chair up on the up into the jetway, and it can take a while. And they try to get you off that plane as quickly as they can. In the airline industry, they talk about tarmac turn times, and that's what costs them a lot of money. because they're just burning jet fuel while they're waiting for us to get off the plane. And and so Corey Lee's got a video of himself being threatened by the flight attendants that I think TSA was going to come with guns to get him off the plane. And he held his ground because he knew that they've got a Bill of Rights for disabled air travelers now that demand that he has his device in the jetway before he gets off the plane. Because like I said, you really don't want to spend any amount of time on that aisle chair as you can. The more time you spend on there, the more time you're going to get some skin breakdown. And I've got a good couple videos. I don't know if we can play Jeremy's videos that you can kind of talk through what this process was.
So this is coming back from our last tournament, and this chair here is supposedly their new aisle chair. They showed up with it. I just totally shook my head because you can see how much higher it is to the seat. And transferring onto that, I mean, it's a good 6 inches higher. But on this flight, they brought in 2 people to help do the lift. I'm a big guy, I'm 185 pounds, and they brought in 2 of the smallest people possible. And this is pretty much every flight. And so I always try to let the airlines know that I need some bigger people to lift me up. The problem here was that there was a language barrier on top of his size. So he was trying to lift me. He didn't understand what I was saying. I couldn't convey on what I needed. So he tries to lift me. I tried to lift myself up. It didn't work. In another video we have, I just said, please go get somebody else. They stared at me blankly. It took my wife getting very vocal for them to actually go get somebody. They finally did. They got me a different aisle chair that was much lower, a lot closer to the seat height. Was actually able to transfer onto it myself, and then once I was loaded up, they wheeled me out. But then it came to the point, I think this is the lower one here. So I'm able to transfer, but there's still the language barrier, how my legs are spasming. So you have to let them know what you need. For me, it's getting my legs put up onto the footrest and my legs strapped, as if not, my legs will bang into the seats and my legs will spasm, and if I spasm, I'll slide out and off of the aisle chair. So being strapped in so you're comfortable is huge. We've got some guys that, they only ask to just be on the chair or throw one strap over. For me, I like to have both straps and my legs strapped. It's safer for me, it's safer for the airline, it's safer for everybody. But once you're out there, like on this trip, when they transfer you, if you have to have help, especially like a 2-person lift, being transferred from an aisle chair to your manual chair or your power chair, whatever it is, make sure that you convey to them the lift that needs to be done. When I come out of my chair, I'm super tight into it. So if I get drugged across my tires or my side guards, it's a possible skin tear, and that's going to have me in bed for months. So if you don't let them know that you need a high lift, make sure you got big enough people that can do that transfer lift. Just be your biggest advocate you can for it, for your safety.
Yep.
When you're transferring in and out of that transfer chair, does it have to be the airlines that helps you, or can you have the person that's with you help with the transfer?
So it all depends. Some are sticklers on who can help. We travel with a support staff with our team, so a lot of times if they're with us, we have them lift us because they know how to do it. They're doing it all the time. They know our size and all that, and they do it the right way. Hopefully when we do that, the flight attendant, whoever the lift team is, whatever, they can kind of see how it's done and it teaches them. But it's definitely, we feel a lot safer to have somebody else do it that knows what they're doing.
Yep.
Do the aisle chairs have brakes? It seemed really wiggly and tipsy when you were in the video.
Yeah, they do have it's a brake, but it's not very good.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to have them holding onto the chair in the back for sure. Sometimes in the front, because they have some legs that kind of stick out that you can have them hold onto while you're transferring, just to make sure it doesn't move at all.
I have a quick question. How the hell do you play rugby without getting injured?
Who said he doesn't get injured?
There's a little injury here and there, but we're strapped in pretty tight. We're custom built wheelchairs, so it's pretty protective of the body. Come watch a game.
So, Kenny, the straps that you had on in the picture, and then when you say to strap your feet, are you just bringing your own like gait belts, or is that something that is there on site?
Yeah, I bring my own gait belt like that. I've got a whole extra Roho. I've got Roho pumps in that bag that I'm bringing with me. And then, yeah, I didn't really go into details as far as the breakdown of my chair, because I take my armrests off, my headrests, my drive screen, my phone. I take all that stuff and I'm putting that stuff on the plane. I'm not putting it under the plane because that's mission critical. And yeah, I bring the sling with me. I've loaned it. I loan it out to friends when I know they're flying. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the airlines, their transfer teams now have them. I don't know the state of them or how well they work, but yeah, for me, I spent the extra money on that comfort carrier, and it really helps keep me snug and secure, and I leave it on me while I'm in flight. I might undo the top straps and then just use the gait belt that I bring to wrap around the seat. But yeah, it just keeps, all my arms and legs from flopping all over the place. And so, yeah.
Do you use the aisle chairs that are assembled during the flight?
No, I don't. I never do. Most of the lavatories are not accessible. Like I think they've got accessible bathrooms in the wide body planes, but that's usually only used for international travel for the most part. Yeah, you guys get to see a lot of cool stuff in the news about legislation changing, and there's the prototypes of getting a wheelchair on the plane, and all those things are a long ways away. I think the bathrooms on single aisle planes aren't mandated until 2035, and so we've got a long ways to go. Thankfully, there's a lot of good work going on behind the scenes. I get to see some of that stuff. I don't get to talk about it, but it is it's more promising than it was a decade ago, but we still have a long ways to go. Yeah. Yep.
Speaking about international travel, have either of you traveled internationally to any places longer flights?
The question was, have you traveled internationally or longer flights? Is that right?
Have you done international?
I flew to Mexico last year. Last year. And it was a really good flight, actually. I had a better lift team in Mexico than I did in the States, which I don't know why that is, but they were definitely more about listening to what I needed. And I know not all countries, from what I've heard from Greg here, it may be different in other places, but that's just a little bit that I've done internationally.
Yeah. I haven't personally done any international travel, but I have a lot of friends. One of our board members on the Here Now project, Kazim Kogita, he's gone to Dubai. He's going to Paris for the Olympics. He's been all over in a power chair, and he's made it work. And it just takes that clear communication and a lot of advocacy and a lot of preparation. And then the longer flights are, they're a wrinkle, especially for high quads when we got skin integrity. I've done the red eye to New York. I've done from SeaTac to Florida. They're doable, but you just got to do a lot of pressure releases. I'm doing one probably at least every 45 minutes to an hour, and whether that's leaning side to side or bringing me forward, we use that sling kind of as an extra tool to release pressure too. So, yeah. And then I think we're on the last slide. Is just like if damage does occur, which you can see it looks like one of Jeremy's rugby chairs got a little beat up in the process. You want to really pay attention to that and grab a complaint resolution officer. They're down in the baggage compartment. Every airline has one, and so you just want to go and document that and make sure that's in the works before you leave. But I mean, yeah, they will fix your stuff and they will pay 100%, but it may take a long time. When I had both my chairs destroyed, I think each time it took about 6 months for them to be fixed. Yeah, it depends on the DME person that you've got with you, but now actually in putting this slideshow together, I was looking on John Morris's blog, and apparently there's now a mandate from the DOT as well that if you don't want to wait on their DME person to fix the chair, you can have them pay you directly, and you can go find your own medical provider to fix the stuff, and that might be a little bit quicker. Yeah. And then I think the last slide is a bunch of resources. There's a really good Navigating the Skies put together by United Spinal Association. I wrote 5 pro tips for getting on and off the planes kind of thing. But yeah, the Curb Free with Corey Lee is a great one as well. And I think that's, yeah, we can just kind of go through and you don't need to play that, but yeah. Yeah, the bottom line is planes are not accessible, but if you do your homework and communicate clearly, all that stuff, that you can make this stuff work for you in the long run. And it's a great way to get around. You know, road trips are great, but 2 hours down to California is a lot better. And yeah, it's a doable thing with a lot of preparation and a lot of clear communication. So we can, with that, we went over a little bit, but if there's any other questions, yeah.
Do they make like bags that you can put your chair in? I have a parent with little kids, and it's like car seat bags, stroller bags. Some of them are custom that you can pop wheels up and they're all padded and everything's protected. Like, is that something that exists?
The question's about if there's bags or anything for wheelchairs. Jeremy might be able to handle that for manual chairs. I don't know of any with power chairs.
There's wheel bags that a lot of guys will they'll just pull their wheels off and put them in those bags. You can get them padded. Those are definitely good to protect wheels like that. A big thing is, like, if you're real specific, like if you really don't want your wheels damaged or whatever, you can pull your wheels off and you can carry them onto the plane with you and put them up above. A lot of people do that. Same with your cushion. Anything that's very, very critical to make sure it doesn't get damaged, you keep that with you. But like for frame wise, I haven't seen anything.
Does it seem like that would be helpful, or does that feel like another just like, that doesn't feel reasonable?
I think maybe if it's in a bag, it may be thought of as luggage, and they may toss it like they toss your luggage. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it already gets tossed as it is, so maybe it's a little protection, but.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I will add, I was just at Alaska Airlines this week, and there's a lot more talk about the flight attendant closet. They're very protective of that, but in reality, even through the ACAA, that space is supposed to be mandated for passengers. And so if you have a chair that can break down, they can put it in the closet. If you can get your backrest and everything small enough. I can't remember the exact dimensions of the closet, but that space is for us. If as long as you just communicate really well and make sure that they know that you know your rights, then they should give that up to you. So, you know. Ooh.
How about when you arrive at a place with a bag lost or a piece of equipment damaged or missing? How do you establish communication with somebody that has a clue what's going on? Say it's a Sunday or Saturday night late and none of your captors show up. You know, how do you get someone in communication with someone that sort of understands what's going on?
Yeah, so the question is, what happens if you show up and you're missing parts or something's broken and or your baggage gets lost? I've had all those things happen. Haven't had the chair not show up. I've heard a lot of horror stories about that. I think you've had one, Greg. But that's where the complaint resolution officer should be the person that should be the liaison. When I landed in Newark, it was 8 a.m. on Father's Day morning on a Sunday, and they still had a CRO, is what they're called, on hand that did the best they could. Alaska Airlines lost my luggage on the way back, or on the way to Washington, D.C. a few years ago, and it was a 2 a.m. supermarket sweep through CVS is what it was, like just trying to find whatever we could. But bringing some of those, like we bring a cath change, we bring like a set of supplies in our carry-on as well. just to make sure, if we show up, we've got a day or two's worth of stuff on hand. So,
Yeah, I learned that lesson it wasn't the hard way, but when I was coming back from one of the USA camps, our flight got, I think, canceled. So they put us up in the hotel for the night, and by then all of my stuff was already, checked, and I wasn't able to get it, so they just gave us a hotel. And the guy that I was traveling with had been traveling for quite a while, and the best advice he gave me was that make sure you have a backpack with you that has essentials for at least 2 days. Clothes, catheters, medicine, all of those critically essential things that you're going to need in case something like that happens, so you can at least make it through till you can, find those things that you do need.
I agree.
nice.
Hand back there.
You're on the advisory board, right?
Yeah.
Have any of the airlines put together a curriculum for their baggage handlers, how to handle specialty equipment?
The question is, to have any carriers put together any curriculum for their baggage handlers to handle baggage, and it's yes. And I've sat in on those, and they leave a lot to be desired. The fact is, these chairs are, the bases may be the same, but they're pretty custom from the wheels up, and there's really no way to prepare handlers for the amount and different styles of chairs. It's more of a scared straight, don't screw it up. That was lunch, and that's all you get. They do their best, but even baggage handlers only getting paid whatever they get paid to lift 50-pound bags. And so the great thing is you're going to see, even especially at SeaTac, I know, I can't remember if it was Alaska Airlines or Boeing themselves added scissor lifts to the airport. So there's a lot of, they're more prevalent so that people aren't having to lift a 450-pound chair. They're just using a scissor lift. And yeah, I know we only got a little, or we're already over, but Corey Cooper, do you have a question?
Yeah, like TSA cares that you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
is that the only, is that their primary service that they provide? Or when you call into the hotline, are you saying, I want this specific service that TSA cares provide? What is that, what are you asking for?
Yeah.
In that attendant?
Yeah, I just asked for an escort. An escort through check-in and all of that stuff. I think TSA Cares is actually built for a whole slew of other things. It's got a really robust kind of resource on the website. But yeah, I tell them, I'm flying with a power wheelchair and we're going to need whatever assistance we can. And it depends on their availability because they probably only got so many people on staff. So it's a little hit and miss with who you're going to get, but it's worth a call. So, oh, Christy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's also a service at SeaTac that you could call in addition. I forget what it's called, it's on the website, but they'll escort you from your car to the ticket counter. So then you have to have additional escorts outside of the actual building.
Okay. So just to reiterate, yeah, Christy Martin knows of resources for SeaTac Airport to get you to and from the curb as well. So hit her up after this.
Laura, did you have that? Yeah.
Is there enough time?
Maybe, do we have one more quick, Laura, you want to say, or there's someone back here? Is there?
What's Tina pointing at?
For me, I do have a question.
Oh.
So let's say the worst case scenario happens and you arrive at your destination, your chair is destroyed. What do you do for equipment? Where do you look for another powered chair?
Right. Well, yeah, that's where it is good to do your homework ahead of time and call any DME providers that might be at your destination. And just to be like, hey, I'm coming to town. You may not have a head-controlled power wheelchair, but something may happen. And for me, they brought me a hand-controlled chair, which wasn't the most ideal when I was in New York City, but at least my caregivers and my wife got to drive me around Manhattan. So, it's about staying on top of them, And yeah, but doing a little bit of homework ahead of time, especially if you can find one of the national outfits, because they're a little more well connected these days. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I think that was very educational for me, hopefully for the rest of you as well. We have a break, which is going to be our second community driver demonstrations outside. So if you didn't get a chance the first time, or you want to see some other people demonstrate, please check that out. Buy raffle tickets and check out the bus. So you've got a busy break in front of you.